Going to say at the beginning of these. Hey everyone, welcome back for another Monday Money Talk Live. You all know that this is your place to come each and every week to hear two people who are interested in building their business to high levels, high performing people who have figured out some of the money making game. We like to talk about, money blocks, things that are coming up in business, things that help you accelerate your business, money flow. And today we have an awesome guest on, Dr. Alex Ridley. And I actually got to be on her podcast and we talked about all things money making. And at the end I said, oh, you need to come on and talk to my audience about money and health, because those two things are so interrelated. And so welcome to the show today, Dr. Alex.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's start. I've been asking lately, what's a quote that you live by? Because I love quotes and most people do. So I always like to have you come up with a quote that you live by that can influence and help people be motivated and inspired today.
Yeah. So the one that, and I think it actually came up when we did our interview on my podcast, but the one that's always spoken to me is Marianne Williamson's quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. I don't have to read the whole thing. You guys can Google it, but that one's always giving me chills. And just, if I'm feeling
it
reignites my passion. So
yeah. I love that you say this. So when I was in grad school, I had that printed out and on my desk area. And this was like before, it was very much prior to my personal growth and development days. And I always just resonated with that one so much because it was like, wow, it's actually, it seems strange and counterintuitive in some ways to think like, oh, I don't want to shine my light as brightly as possible. But when we do shine our light as brightly as possible, I always think about how it lifts other people up around me. And it's definitely something I struggled with in the past, which was to dim my light so that other people didn't feel small around me. And I didn't really know it until I started getting into, coaching world and was like, oh my God, this is an issue for me. So I'm so curious for you, like, why does that resonate? Is there a backstory?
Yeah, well, I think it's something very similar, actually. And I think you're probably alluding to, I've read the book, The Big Leap by that one. So I'm, my big fear has always been driven by, outshining others, essentially, because I was not really a prodigy child, but I've always excelled in a lot of things and kind of played at a high level. And so I think that's, and I think also as a female, like this conversation in business is really important too, because we kind of will downplay ourselves. And this has been my experience in business. And part of what I wanted to talk with you about today, but, I never wanted to take credit for the business that I built. I didn't, and that actually comes from a money block, but I can talk about that later. And so it's tapping into that, like, no, you are actually awesome and powerful, and it's okay to let that out. Because that will serve the world more than hiding. And really are. So that's what speaks to me about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, go there a little bit. I want to hear, I know you have a really incredible history of being a powerful business owner, businesswoman, and then, come at some of the struggles there. So will you talk to us about that? Share your history of your business.
Yeah. So it really started, I was thinking about this the other day on another podcast episode I did, but when I graduated from chiropractic school, which is what my doctorate is originally in, my class actually gave me the Leadership and Entrepreneurship Award, as we had 8 core proficiencies. And so they voted like which student in our graduating class embodied one of those. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why am I getting this award? And it took me until about 5 years into business that I realized, like, who I really am is a leader and an entrepreneur. And chiropractic was something I did, but I built this business that we basically doubled in growth every year for 5 years. I was a single mom while I was doing it. It was a lot of insanity. And, in our busiest year, I think we were just shy of 7 figures. And so what was interesting about it and what was there for me was I didn't want to take credit for any of that, because I had a team that I led and worked with, and we were very much tied into the insurance game that kind of crashed and burned a couple of years ago. So things have changed a lot, but I've been thinking a lot about this, doing some mindset work for myself, is, my kind of story with money was, in our family, we never had enough. And so anything cool that we got to do, or, I got lots of opportunity, but it came from somebody else. it was my grandparents, or it was a scholarship, or
Mm,
it was another family member that paid for some of the big stuff. And I think that very much shaped like me just thinking like, oh, well, my success is coming from somebody else. It's not me.
mm-hmm.
And there's also that like line of wanting to be humble, but not, and so it becomes this like out of integrity thing of like, this is who I am and how I show up in the world and the impact I can make versus I don't want to take any credit for that. So it's been this really interesting journey that I feel like our conversation on my podcast actually just kind of helped me start to solidify more. And I've made some big decisions, like I'm completely retiring from chiropractic at the end of May, which is something I've
Wow.
about for 3 years, but not actually had the courage to do. And, and really just jumping into more of health consulting and coaching, for my health actually. And I know we were going to talk about health, but yeah, so I'll let you jump in with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I always love to get to the core. I always ask what is a money belief or a money block that you had to overcome to get where you are today. So, and it's such a layered phenomenon. It's like every level that we get to, there's a different experience of money blocks. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And, that idea you said, we never had enough. And then like you couldn't own the success because it was coming from other people. What was the process like for you to start to own your success? Because I mean, building a 7-figure business is a very incredible accomplishment. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's not happening by accident.
Yeah.
And, I had to do a lot of work on really stepping into leadership and owning it, figuring out how to lead a team, like breaking down some of my fears. And, I was very much a people pleaser. And so I originally built this really, they were great. I loved them, but they were very self-centered staff who, wanted, I basically bent over backwards for them for a lot of years. And so,
Okay.
in that process, like it's ugly at times. You're kind of going through breaking yourself down and rebuilding yourself as who you really are. But, I've always been someone who's really excelled through personal growth and development stuff. And so with coaching and with, just a lot of it's about shifting perspective. And I think you talk about a lot about this. You have to take your blinders off on who you think you are and step into something new. And I think the best business advice I ever got, everyone would always complain in school about how we didn't get business training because we would read books like Good to Great or, Think and Grow Rich or, a lot of these mindset things that are really designed to challenge who you are. And what we don't realize is business is about how we show up. Like it's entirely, anyone can do books and figure out how to make money, but if you're really going to grow at something, you have to be willing to change because it will change you.
Yeah.
If you don't, you stay stuck.
Totally.
So,
Well, and or you could have huge success in business, but not appreciate it or enjoy it and feel afraid it's always going to go away. Or you really, I remember you sharing your story. It's like you get there one day and you realize, oh, I've built something I didn't really want to build, and I don't feel free.
Yeah, and that was totally my story. I can just share this briefly. Like we got to the point we'd grown so much. I had 12 staff. I bought a 6,000 square foot building and remodeled this thing and basically put like all of our savings and, our capital that we'd built up, our net worth into this building. And I walked upstairs into my office there one day and I was just like, this is not my dream or what I wanted like at all. And it was really confronting and scary. And so the last probably 3 years, I've been gradually disassembling that dream and not always doing it in a great way, but kind of working through the stuff that comes up with that and then building what is actually my dream, but knowing that it's always about having my own business and, impacting the world and what I want to do in that way. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I want to say it's like so courageous to do because usually when you get to that level, I'm thinking of sunk cost theory, where it's like you go, oh, I've been all in, I've put all my time, my energy, my money into this. Like, am I really going to let it go after I've built it to this level? Yeah. Will you talk a little bit about this? Because I think it's really cool that something that happens along the way of building a successful, financially successful business is that you learn the ropes of being able to do that. But then yours was like this layer that was being willing to let go of that specific success to step more into your inspired dream and vision. Yeah. So will you talk about that a little? Because that's pretty big, that's courageous and not everybody's willing to do that.
Yeah. And I think on some level, a part of me like has fought myself for the last it's gotten a lot better in the last year, but I was resistant. And at the same time, I also had a need to change. So my wrist was torn up from adjusting. I had 6 tears in it. I had surgery in 2019. And I finally admitted to myself, like, it's starting to hurt again because I've been adjusting part-time, but still adjusting. And I'm like, I just can't do this. And so, it's not easy. Like, a part of it when you've built a business or, when you're making a shift, and a lot of the women I coach, maybe they're realizing their career isn't their dream, or it's keeping them sick, or, whatever it is. And that was a lot of it for me as well. You have to allow your identity to shift. And like, I'm not saying it's easy. I have courage and I take action quickly. And when I'm clear on something, like, I just do it. I decided last week that I'm going to officially retire from chiropractic practice at the end of May. And the next day I started telling my patients I'm going to retire at the end of May. So it's just like, and as soon as I spoke that into existence, someone contacted me to buy some of the equipment that I've been trying to sell, like, immediately. Putting out there, a couple of my coaching patients signed on for longer term care. Like, it just, it's like things started to shift. And so when you stop hindering yourself and really get honest with, this is like, first you have to recognize this is not what I want. And then you have to be honest about what you really do want. And as soon as you take that first step in action, it just starts to snowball. And so I'm really like centered on it and really excited about, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And at the same time, it's not easy. I'm letting go of a huge part of what's been my identity for the last decade, which is as a chiropractor. And I love the people I serve in that capacity, but I know that I'll be able to do so much more stepping away from it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is a question, but
yeah. Well, you said so many things. I was thinking about the power of clear intention, decision, and action, and what that signals to the universe, and then how all of those things just start to happen for you. But it's you making the decision really clearly and then declaring it out loud. Because I think a lot of times what we do, and I know I've done this in the past, is make a decision based out of a place of what I thought was possible before, and not being able to expand my mindset into what I want to really be possible and step into that fullest version of myself. And the more and more I do it, and the more you take that leap of faith, that is one of my all-time favorite books, is the Big Leap and Zone of Genius. I mean, I talk about it all the time. And that book changed my reality because exactly that. It was like, take the leap and be committed to living in your zone of genius. And if you, it can shift over time, like you can step into something and then all of a sudden you learn, you pivot, I mean, it's just such a learning process, I think. I would imagine building your business to that level and then, going, oh, let's build a 6,000 square foot office, and then getting there and going like, oh crap, this isn't totally what I wanted to build. But then taking that next step and now what you're creating. So what are you creating now?
What am I creating?
Yeah.
So I am really creating freedom for myself and the people I work with. And I'm sorry, we had a huge the school's out today, and but
the beauty of working from home.
So I'm really working in the virtual space, working with women around overcoming some of this stuff. No, you may not. You can go downstairs. I'm very sorry.
No problem.
So, what I learned, a large part of my story was actually around my own health. So I ended up with a thyroid issue. I'm still dealing with this. I just diagnosed myself with subclinical hypothyroidism. That has come from years of stress, of not putting myself first, of, not making the time for myself and just kind of staying too focused on all the other people I'm serving and, my business, my staff, all of that. And so I really help women in leadership positions, whether it's like I work with a lot of professors or, business owners of that sort, like re-find our balance and really connect to that dream. And so a lot of that focuses on health, because our health, when we're not living in alignment with ourselves, our health starts to tank, which I'm a primary example of that. Everyone I work with is, but that to a bigger scale. Because when we're not good, like, our families aren't good, our kids aren't good, our careers aren't good, our jobs aren't good. And so it's really about bringing that focus back here. So that's kind of in a roundabout the way of, explaining what I'm creating, but, more in that coaching realm and being able to take time with people. Like, I love chiropractic for the impact that it can have on lives. And it certainly impacted my life. But, when you're seeing people for 5 minutes and rotating through, because that's the only way to really make money in a service-based industry, you don't get that chance to really help someone transform and their life. And so I'm, in a much bigger conversation around transformation for women and, helping us really step into who we are, because we're powerful beings in the world. And, I think we're up to a lot, and I'm about impacting that conversation around what women are capable of and do.
Yeah. Something that's coming to mind as you're speaking is this. It's interesting because everybody has such different money blocks, and one of yours that's standing out that you've called out is that idea of you build it, you don't want to own the success. It feels a little scary to shine the light, and then also being able to build it to a really successful level. Because some people, it's like they don't have a lot of money and they have money blocks, and then some people are able to generate a lot of money and they have money blocks, and because we all have money blocks. And so that idea around like money is stressful. So I'm curious, like as you started to degrade your health over time, what have you shifted from a practical perspective that you can help listeners? Because I know that this is a common issue. Entrepreneurs tend to be very high drive, very business minded, very type A. We can either be like heart centered and undercharge and over deliver, or we can be like driven and do too much and put too much on our plate. Like all of these symptoms show up in our health. Absolutely. So I would, just love to hear some perspectives and tips there.
Yeah, it's not easy. So I'm more the like put too much on your plate and be super driven and then like crash. So I would typically get sick, or like I had to take 2 months off with my wrist twice. I pushed too hard, too long.
The physical manifestations of overdoing it.
Yeah. And so, even if it's starting really small, like something I've gotten really good at is when I first wake up in the morning, I don't open my email. I don't check, messages. I don't check social media. I read either the Bible or something that's going to like serve me, or do a meditation of some sort that's going to put me in a positive mindset. And so like that is a habit now. I just do it consistently all the time. And if I miss a day because of travel or something, like I can tell. So it's taking those initial small steps to take care of yourself, whether that's a 5-minute walk or taking some deep breaths, or, you have to be willing to start to plug those things in. And then the other thing that's really been impactful for me, even when I was still in this, huge mess of a business that I didn't really want, was block scheduling and being really intentional with, knowing, not to the point, it feels like micromanaging, but it's not. It frees you up actually to know, like, at this time, this is what I should be focusing on. So you're not constantly, because it's so easy to go through your day and feel like you did all this stuff but got nothing accomplished because your focus hasn't been in the right place. And so the willingness to just like be on this for this amount of time and then pause and be done. And then, when I got remarried, I also forced myself to get better. So I'd say at least 5 days a week, I don't have work out in the evening. Like when I come home, I'm just home.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's because you're in the office right now. So when you shift everything, will you shift everything from home base, or will you still have an office that's outside of your house?
I am letting go of the office that's outside. And right there, I only go there 2 days a week.
Okay.
So I'm like sharing space with some other people really part-time, but I'm letting it go completely, and I'm going to be 100% at home, which means I really need to build a she shed office, but I'm on that now because I'm like under the stairs in our dining room. But
well, I mean, it's important what you're saying. It's boundaries around time. Something I see all the time, and I love having these conversations because I see such common patterns between people. And one of those things is we think that if we give of our time all the time, that we're going to be able to bring in more and generate more. But when we're depleted, we actually are way less magnetic, and it makes our work harder. So it has the opposite effect of what we want, because we're like, oh, fill it up, make it happen. And then when I get there, I'll be happy and I'll relax. And instead, it's this whole thing where you go, set the morning routine, like you said, do the things that inspire you first thing, set boundaries around your time, do time blocking, and it does life altering. And for everyone watching or listening to this at some point in the future, like, do not, like, you set that in your calendar and you treat it like a date or an appointment. You do not change it. And I'm very rigid around that as well. Like, I do like morning blocks, and I start my day with exercise and journaling and meditation and personal growth and development. And not every single day. I have some days where I have earlier clients that I don't do that, all of those things. But generally speaking, I am very good about blocking off and going like, this is me time. And if I don't have it, I feel off, because I'm on that tendency too, where I can overfill my plate and get really stressed out. And I used to kind of push, and then just crash and push and crash. And now it's just like so much more balanced. And I always remember I'm modeling for my people, do I want to work 18 hours a day? If I do, it's a choice. If I, but generally speaking, I'm like, no, I'm taking the weekend off. I might take Friday, Saturday off and then work Sunday, which is the beauty of having your own business. But I'm very good about going, I need some playtime and I need unstructured fun time. And otherwise, what is the point of all of this?
Well, that's the thing that, I was thinking about is like, if you're going to own your own business and do this thing, it has to work for you. Like you're not, and yes, it's hard work and there's sacrifice and there's things you have to do, but it should be serving you in a way that like this makes more sense than having the 9 to 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think sometimes entrepreneurs create it's like worse than a 9 to 5, where they go like it's like 9 to 9 and then not stable income because they've got all these money blocks that are causing their flow, or it's super stress, or they're not getting time with their family, or, whatever it is. So it's like creating a prison out of your business, and no one wants that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got some lovely comments coming in. Great interview that addresses financial freedom, gender equity, yes, and how to prevent overload from being a type A personality. Thank you, Bob, for being here. Talk about that a little bit. Like, what does financial freedom mean to you? I always love to ask this question. Like, what does wealth mean to you? Genuine wealth, financial freedom. Like, say a little bit there.
That is such an interesting question. I've been thinking, like, I think because I grew up in an environment where my parents were always fighting about money, like wealth and financial freedom, like for me has always meant like no stress. Like I can afford whatever I need in whatever moment. I can give whatever I want to give to, people, causes, just like the freedom to live without worrying about it. Right. And I don't think that's actually a reality, but I'm going to create that. I'm going to,
absolutely. Yeah.
And, I think wealth, it doesn't necessarily just have to be financial, because there's wealthy, as you said, there are, wealthy people who are massively unhappy or feel guilty about how much money they have or whatnot. So I would actually look at wealth as I do health. It's where everything flows. It's your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, your financial well-being, your spiritual well-being. It's all of those things just working on in congruence with each other. Can have all of them at one time. That's another thing, is I've always thought, and I think a lot of us grew up thinking like, well, one of my big blocks was around relationships. And because I went through a divorce, really kind of nasty stuff. I was married to an alcoholic, and it was really tough. So then I was a single mom, and, I'm this business owner. And I found, as I was trying to start dating again, like I had this story that I was like too driven for most men, right? Like I was too big a leader, all those things. I know leads can relate to this. And then I met my husband, and I realized like that doesn't have to be a thing. And he, he's also very driven. He's a CFO of a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization up here in Alaska. But, I found like, if I was expanded enough, like I can be that partner and still be that person.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be an either or. It's not like you as well as an entrepreneur or have a great relationship and marriage.
I'm so glad you said that.
That's wealth too. Like all of those.
Absolutely. When we look up the word wealth, it means it's the combination of health and well-being is wealth, the word wealth. So funny we have it tied to money, because it's like health and well-being takes into account all the holistic parts of wealth building, of wealth and feeling good and freedom and all those things. So it's like such an important thing. And then I think that piece, I know a lot of powerhouse women that have that. It's like, oh, I can be rich or have a good relationship. I can't do both. So it's this scarcity thinking around either or instead of both and I definitely, that was one that was a big breakthrough for me too. It's like, oh, you can have both. Yes. I want both. I want all the good things in life. So yeah, that was a big one for me too, because I always thought like either I'm too threatening as a successful woman, or no, someone's going to hold me back, which is going to annoy me. Or, I mean, I had a lot of stuff going on there. And then I had that simultaneous belief, like I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian family. So I had a lot around men are supposed to be the breadwinners. So, I love that Bob's highlighting that we're talking about gender equity. What do you think are some of the unique challenges for women business builders and especially moms?
Yeah, well, so the big thing I found, especially because I was a single mom growing my business for a long time, I think there's, in this patriarchal society, there's like, we've just created that business is supposed to look a certain way, right? And kids aren't there. And I just was like, I can't do that. And so when I launched my business, I had an in-house nanny, and I tended to attract other single moms who worked for me. And we had a pack of kids that were at the office until that didn't work. And like, that was what we were. And if it didn't work for you, then we weren't the office for you, like that, we weren't the practice for you to come get care. And so, I think as women in particular, it's like we push to try to be like men, lead like men, or, there's a lot of pressure to, I think there's a lot of male driven, male centric, like I had a lot of male coaches who would just, kind of like shoot the shit, say, straight, and just be like, well, just do this thing. And I'm like, but I feel bad, and I have these feelings that I want to process about it. And so I think that's more the female side. And I found that the more I owned that side of me and led from a really, feminine place, which included some nurturing and some of that stuff, but with like clear direction, as we've been talking about, I was more aligned and probably more effective and powerful as a leader, with my staff and with that. And it's so interesting. I've had 2 men work for me that I employed, another chiropractor and a rolfer, and I paid all of us as providers on the same pay structure. And I have no evidence to back this up, but they always made more money than I did, based on our pay structure, which was based on the insurance money that we collected. And I swear, like, insurance companies reimburse men more often than they do women, or at a higher rate.
Interesting.
This is the racket I have. But it's very viable because there's so many statistics on women just making more in the workplace than men do.
I know people who their parents name them gender neutral names just for that reason. It's like Dr. Alex, like if you just put Dr. Alex, no one would know what your gender is. And they, as a sociologist, we did a lot of studies around this where they would same exact resume with gender masculine name versus feminine, and different pay, different opportunities, it was like fascinating,
It's so interesting. So, and I think we have a lot as women to work through there. And, you mentioned Christian upbringing. I came to Christianity later in life, and it really challenged me for a while, because my first marriage, like, they were very conservative Christian. And the fact that I started a business when my son was 6 weeks old, which is what I did, was just, they're like, you don't stay home. And then my mother didn't mean anything by it, but my ex-husband was injured, and so he was disabled and home for like a year and a half. And I was working full time and had the kid full time, and she made a comment about how I didn't upkeep the house, and I was just like, And so it's these very, like, we're moving in this, I think, kind of our upcoming generation of, like, I'm in my 30s, and the women in their 30s and 40s, we're starting to transition that conversation a little bit, but part of that is stepping into our power, which is where we started from. So
well, and really thinking about money and gender equity, it's like, if you have 2 powerhouse, a couple of powerhouse, let's say in a heterosexual relationship, and you have those dynamics going on, it's like, it's interesting to even think about, in sociology, it's called the second shift. So it's like when a woman gets home from work, she still has the second shift. So she's got like the cleaning and the laundry and the grocery shopping and the primary childcare and all that stuff. So it's like, I see things balancing out some. Statistically, things are shifting. I wouldn't say it's still equal, but there's definitely some big shifts. And I do think it's because powerful women are stepping in and going like, hey, there's no reason I can't have both. And how are we going to construct a relationship with kids where we both take on these responsibilities and enjoy our lives and create freedom and a good feeling around all of it? So it's just such a different Yeah, I mean, and then it depends on your background and your upbringing too. I think just like money blocks, we get and money downloads, we get relationship downloads, and then we set up the expectations for our relationships based on what our belief system is around that. So it's so fascinating. If you had to articulate like what you think your very biggest money block that you've overcome so far in building your business, what would you say that it is?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I don't know your terminology around a lot of that stuff, but like if I were to put it in words, probably like I am worthy of making money is the big one, just because I grew up in such a scarcity mindset my whole life.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
So it's like, I mean, because you clearly were capable of making a lot of money because
Right.
you've proven it. So it's owning that you deserve it is the feeling behind it.
I think like looking back on the last 3 years, because I've been in kind of this scarcity place, right? Where I went from this huge business, and a couple of things happened. Like the insurance industry tanked in Alaska, so literally overnight we started collecting half the money, and most of it was in salary and paying my employees, and like had to let all of them go basically to just stay afloat. And so those like something shifted in me with that, where I started to think like I couldn't do it. I was trying to do it, but I couldn't do it, and I'm still like working through how to articulate this. So maybe we can we'll figure it out.
Do it right now.
But, so it's like I went from big business to like barely surviving, tons of debt, not able to pay myself, like all of this stuff. But at the same time, like I realized the only thing keeping me stuck there was myself. And so I don't know how well I'm articulating this, but like a lot of it's come up from, needing, and at the same time I actually got remarried, so it was like I suddenly wasn't having to be the provider and do it all. And I think I kind of like went back into, well, somebody else is responsible for this, or it's not me, that kind of thing.
And it's almost like reinforcing that belief, like that you're not worthy, because then all of a sudden someone comes in and rescues. But then I'll just say it because what came to mind when you were talking was more of this thing too around, I always look at how the universe helps us out and knocks us down to get us back into alignment. So often when we're building something we don't really want to be building because it's what we were told we should do, or there's, some unconscious driver there, and then things will happen to knock you back into balance, so it's like we get sick, risks get hurt, like you just have these big shifts, and all of a sudden you're like, it's like COVID, right? It's a huge collective pause to go like, what really matters to me? How do I want to make my money? How much money do I need to have in the bank for situations like this? like all of it brings up everything. And so that's when you were saying, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, to have a big epiphanies, physical meltdown, like health degrading. I think it's why the work that you and I do in the world is so important, because health is a direct, tangible, outer physical response to an inner imbalance. And so when we're not satisfied and we're not fulfilled and we're not living in our zone of genius and we're not connected, we're going to have some sort of outer physical manifestation to knock us back into place. So it's like, I go like, oh, interesting. And then when you feel worthy, you love yourself and you want to take care of yourself. So you want to be in balance. Which is what, it sounds like exactly your process that you're doing. You're like, I want to be in balance now. Like I've got to do a business that feels in balance and not have all this overhead and lack of control and, just different things that don't sound as so fun in business building.
No. Long hours and stress and kid and never home or play, able to play energy. Yeah. All those things. And the courage to step in and create it, because business doesn't have to be something that destroys you.
No, that's like the opposite, right? No. But a lot of people struggle with that. What would you say? I like to give listeners or viewers, it's funny sometimes as I podcast often, like I always say listeners, viewers, what would you say is your fastest strategy to make money in your business? And I know you're pivoting, so maybe this is, I'm curious what you'd say there, because you have two different business models going right now.
I do. And so it's interesting because I've actually been thinking about this. Like the chiropractic world and model is what I know and it's what is easy and it's what, sends me referrals and all of that stuff in my community. And I still have people calling, like wanting to get in, and I'm like, no. But probably the biggest pivot and what actually is more financial, like providing more financial freedom at this point for me is high ticket coaching.
Okay.
High ticket is whatever that is for, whoever that is. But
yeah, well, I'm curious just for viewers, like, what does high ticket mean to you? Like, what, because some people have different values of what that means. Is it like a couple thousand and up? Is it
so over 5?
Okay, over 5. Okay. Yeah. And so then it's working with less people, but having a really intensive deep dive one-on-one and going high ticket route. Okay.
Yeah. So people, more impact.
Yeah.
More time for
I'd say the similar thing. It's like I've had, anytime I have a downturn in business, which, it's like, as I've built my business, it's like an upward trajectory, but there's dips in the upward trajectory. Yeah. So same thing. Anytime I go, oh, okay. I know the one thing that brings in money as fast as possible, find one-on-one clients for my high ticket offerings. That's just the fastest shift immediately. And then when you help people and you get that feedback, just feels good because you're in your zone of genius doing amazing things and helping people have impact. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So how can people work with you? Because, and give us a little overview about what it is that you offer in your program, and then share with people how they can work with you.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a program, and I'm specific to women. I know you have both genders watching, but I'm female centric. But I have a women's health rejuvenation program. And so over 6 months, we take you from generally women coming in are overwhelmed, overworked, maybe overweight, just frazzled, exhausted, and don't really know where to start, to really being vibrant, energetic, and on fire is, the transformational process that we go through. And so that looks like a lot of things. I do a lot with nutritional medicine. I have way too much training in that, but also get into, the emotional side, a lot of personal growth, and really instigating behavior change, because that's ultimately, and I found this for myself, a lot of my realizations in the last week and deciding to retire from chiropractic practice was you can make a shift and still create the same bad patterns in the new thing. And so I found myself pushing too hard and taking on too many coaching clients and working too hard and all that stuff. And I'm like, nope, we got to completely break this pattern down. So, I provide a framework to really do that inside of.
Awesome.
To find out more, you can check out my website there, emergentwomenih.com. I have a on-demand class on getting rid of bloating, brain fog, and fatigue, even if you feel like you tried all the things. So
nice. That's great. Good combination. Tell me real quick, remind me, because I know it was on your podcast, but I'm forgetting all of a sudden the name of your podcast. What is it?
It's called Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High Performing Women.
Okay. Rejuvenated Women. So check out podcast, everyone, as well, because you all know I love to promote podcasts. And your program sounds incredible and really necessary for high power women, because I do think there's a tendency to push too hard. I might have said this to you on your podcast when you interviewed me, but one of my favorite mantras this year is the less I work, the more I make. And I just structure everything around that. And I wake up in the morning and go, does this bring me joy? And I'm like, yep. And I do it. And if it doesn't, I go, oh, I need to drop, automate, or delegate. Because I've had a history of burning myself out. And in the last, I'm in my 3rd year of business, and my 1st year I worked my ass off. 2nd year, I worked less and made more. I'm in my 3rd year, we're only in the 2nd quarter now, just beginning. And I'm like, oh, awesome. It's the less I work, the more I make. And when we say work too, there's always that thought of what is work, but there's just, I have a lot more boundaries around my time now. And I just have more, relax more and play more. And then focus everything in my business toward what brings me joy, what brings me joy, what brings me joy. Cause that's living in your zone of genius, which is the most money magnet you can possibly, most money magnetism effect possible is living in your zone of genius and then attracting all the money your way, because you're making an impact through doing things you love to do every day. So that'll be a fun one for you. The less I work, the more I make.
Yeah. I'll put in my mind. And what I'm excited about is I can go down to 2 days of actual client patient care doing this. And then, I think you're probably like me, and other people watching might be there's parts of business that I just really enjoy and can get lost in. Website design, and there's certain things that I just really like, and so it doesn't feel like work, but you still have to put boundaries around it, because it's still you're capable of overdoing it.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like you're a master at helping people not do that. So
Yes.
it's great. Thank you so much for being here. I know we went a little bit over. I keep trying to get these to 30 minutes and then I'm like, oh, I've got to ask all these questions. So
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
yeah, thank you. Have an incredible day. Thanks everyone who was watching, and we will be back next week, or I will be back next week at noon for another Monday Money Live Talk. Bye everyone.